Okay, over to you, Paul, and welcome.
Thank you very much. And seeing as we are an international gathering, greetings from Edinburgh, where the sun has now risen in the last few minutes. It's a pleasure to be part of this event. I've known Bill since the mid 1990s. I studied at Murdoch University under Bill, and I am aware of Bill's contribution not just to scholarship, but to more widely than that, shaping the discipline, training ministers in the context of Western Australia and wider. So Bill is someone who's really made a national and international contribution to the study of theology and to the training of people involved in practical ministry. I want to begin by congratulating Bill on the publication of Jesus Left Loose Ends, yet not only for that, but also for what this book exemplifies: half a century of careful exegesis, innovative scholarship, and unfailing collegiality. This new book contains 17 essays, one of which was previously unpublished, Good News for the Poor and Its Survival, and one that is forthcoming, Mark at the Interface of Cultures. In the first of those new essays, Bill interacts with the views of John Dominic Crossan concerning what Jesus' ministry meant on the ground in his own day. Here, Bill's approach to scholarship is readily illustrated. While it disagrees, and disagrees hard, with Crossan, there is over his lack of an eschatological dimension to Jesus' teaching. Nonetheless, Bill works hard to identify what is valuable in Crossan's ideas and to affirm and preserve that value, namely that Jesus' ministry was a challenge to injustice, power structures, and it sought to bring equality to the poor. Yet alongside this, Bill sees apocalyptic imagery as symbols of that aspiration and hope for the poor. In fact, this essay relates to another essay in the volume, the one from which the volume's title comes, Jesus Left Loose Ends. And in those loose ends, Jesus sees opportunities for disciples in every age to continue the mission and vision of Jesus of Nazareth. The remaining essays are also vintage essays and also more recent examples of Bill's scholarship. What struck me as I read them were two things. First, the consistency of scholarship. The same standards of rigor and exegetical excellence can be seen from the first essays published in 1973 to the last yet to be published. Second, there is a freshness within these pieces, and I refer to some examples such as Bill's 1978-79 New Testament Studies essay, Christ at the Right Hand, which is certainly a classic treatment of that theme, or his 1982 essay in Catholic Biblical Quarterly, The Son of David, Blindness, Possession and Duality in Matthew. Yet alongside those essays in major New Testament journals, we also see that Bill is an innovator. In one of his essays on Matthew's use of Mark, he publishes this in an online forum, and those of us who know Bill will also be aware of his blog, in which he uses his scholarly resources to provide lectionary readings for ministers and those preaching on a weekly basis. So in a way, this book also interfaces with that wider scholarship. So in summing up, these are essays that have and will continue to stand the test of time. So I'd just like to round up these brief comments by again congratulating first ATF Press for the prescience to publish this volume, and to Bill for his work, for his contribution to New Testament scholarship, and above all for his friendship to all of us gathered here today. Thank you and congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. thank you for that. Sorry, I've just lost my voice for there. Thank you, Paul, for that. And now I'll hand over to Bill, the author of this book, who's known to you all, but who has worked for many years in Western Australia and now, as he says, in active retirement in New South Wales, which has allowed him to do this book for us. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Hilary and ADF Press and your team for producing the book. Indeed, like the book is well produced, and I love the cover. The cover is actually a stained glass window from the Glen Waverley Uniting Church in Melbourne, where I was doing a workshop about 20 years ago. And I saw the stained glass window and I thought, I'm going to take a picture of it. And I have permission. The details are in the book. It was actually created by a former minister there. And thank you, Paul, for your comments. I really do appreciate your comments. Some of you won't know that Paul and I are colleagues in the Society for New Testament Studies. Paul is the treasurer, and I am the person responsible for developing international initiatives, that program which seeks to support New Testament scholars in the developing world. So we have quite a bit to do with each other, and I appreciate your comments. When I was asked by Hilary if I would bring together works that spanned half a century, my first thoughts were, well, really? The early ones, really? And then, in all modesty, I went back and read them and I thought, they're actually very good. They're worthwhile reading. And then, of course, I remember that Jimmy Dunn, Professor James D.G. Dunn, some years ago, who read these, said to me, look, you really need to make these available to a wider readership, publish them internationally. Well, I've now finally I'm doing that, and they'll be there for people to read in the book. The book's got a number of other pieces in it, and Paul has mentioned. I benefit greatly by being able to be a specialist and to engage in specialist research across a range of New Testament areas. Of course, I've worked in the area of sexuality, in the area of John and Hebrews, but this book brings together other areas in which I've worked, including historical Jesus material, including understanding of Christology, and as Paul mentioned, understanding of Jesus in relation to issues of the poor. And the title of the book actually is the title of one of the essays, Jesus Left Loose Ends. How did the church cope with the fact that Jesus did not give answers about whether they should circumcise Gentiles or how they should treat food laws? So that was always something very interesting to pursue. I also turned my attention very much to attitudes towards Torah, to the law, particularly as it's reflected in the Gospels and also the historical Jesus. And so some of the papers in there relate to that. Attitudes towards Scripture, both how they treated Scripture and how we might approach Scripture. That's also a theme in the collection. And of course, there are special essays on Matthew and on Mark and on Luke. So I offer these in the hope that they will produce reaction and dialogue. I'm very aware that when you work in these fields, you really are working as a team or in a team with a whole lot of other people. And so if you look at the 20 pages or so of the literature, the bibliography at the end, that's a tribute to the many people who have contributed, helped me in my learning, and helped me to make a contribution. So let me say thank you for the launch, and I look forward to any comments, and of course don't ever hesitate to be in touch with me and tell me that really I did get it wrong about this, or maybe I did get it right. Anyway, thank you very much for the launch, and it's good to be with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Now, before we finish, I open it up to anyone to make comments, to to Bill or to Paul about what has been said. So it is over to you. Unmute your microphone and feel free to speak. Don't be shy.
I wonder if I can make some comments. I was part of Bill's first year teaching in Australia. Bill came from having taught, I think, part-time in Auckland alongside congregational ministry. And he preached at my ordination 40 years ago, early next year. And one of the things that's always struck me about the teaching that I received and the benefits I received from that teaching is that I think Bill both taught and embodied a desire to always keep learning, always keep looking for new things. And that's been an enduring legacy that you brought to me, Bill, together with Chris too. Chris also encouraged that. My Hebrew is currently heading west, somewhere near South Africa. I hope it gets back to Perth by the time I have to knock on heaven's door. And although my wife gets upset at me at the number of books I buy, Bill, I thank you for that. I thank you for the liveliness of your teaching, particularly when you began here in Western Australia. You would often root it in aspects of congregational ministry and real life experience, including, I recall, some of your work with couples you married and with what you used to talk about, the sticky, icky goo of sin that could be evident in the life of congregations. It still is. It still is. I don't yet own a copy of the book. However, I will get one. And I still recall that Christ at the Right Hand before it was, I think, finally written up, as you did that in the first few weeks with us teaching Acts in 1978. And I am profoundly thankful for that. And I thank you that you've just kept generating things that have enriched ministry for many of us in many places.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Anyone else like to say something?
Yeah, I would want to echo that. When I read this, I guess as someone who's a generation younger than Bill, if I can say that, I grew up as a student, and Bill Loader was this big name in Australian New Testament scholarship, as he is around the world, but, you know, looms large when you're, you know, a young student. And, you know, so I expected the scholarly, the critical scholarly work that Paul named, but I was really struck that even though some of these are really old and are, you know, scholarly journal articles and essays, there is that thread of the pastoral and the groundedness that made me really grateful to see them gathered in one place, because I actually think this is a resource not just for scholars, but for theological students and clergy to be able to dip into at different times or to read through, because that thread of how do we grapple with the text, how do we interpret the text, what does it actually mean, is there all along. And I think that speaks to what Ian's articulated so well. You as a pastor and a teacher is evident, it's integrated in your scholarship in ways that we don't always see, I have to say, from top scholars. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for the book, Bill.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any of our other international members of the audience like to say something?
Yes, from my side, from South Africa, Bill, appreciation for two things. The one is your level of scholarship. Everything that I have read that you have published, it is always characterized by very good scholarship and new ideas, but based on thorough research. And then secondly, my appreciation for the way in which you interact with other scholars. All the times that I've seen you at the SNTS, the Colloquium Joanneum and the SPL, wherever you read papers, I always appreciated the polite way in which you interact with other scholars. That's not always the case in our scholarly community, and I really have so much respect for you as a scholar, but also as a person. Thank you very much for this volume.
Thanks, Francois.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you were, yes.
Yeah. Congratulations, Bill. So I haven't read your book yet. I'm looking forward to read it, and it's also nice to see Paul Foster. I think I met you in Perth at the SNTS conference. If I'm not mistaken, I think I am Bill Lauder's last PhD student. I think it's a real privilege and honor. And as most of you have correctly pointed out, I think you combine meticulous scholarship and a pastoral mindset, which you rarely come across among scholars. So thank you so much for all your mentoring, all your guidance, and all the very best.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, anything you'd like to say in conclusion, Bill or Paul?
I would just thank you for the generosity of your comments. It has always mattered to me to take scholarship seriously and take people seriously and take the church seriously. So I do try to hold those things together. And from what you've been saying, sometimes it's worked. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill, and thank you for Paul, and thank you for all the people who've spoken this evening, or this evening here in Australia. Thank you, Bill, for participating in this series. This series has now published 10 books, and we have a number of others in the pipeline, one by Vic Fitzner, a Lutheran New Testament scholar who's worked here in ALC here in Adelaide for many years. We have another one by Ed Campion, a Catholic Church historian, and we have various others in the pipeline in this series as well. And this series only happens because scholars accept the invitation to be part of this. And in doing that, I need to acknowledge the various publishers who've allowed us to bring together the papers which have been published elsewhere over time. And without that, of course, a series like this wouldn't be able to occur. This book is available for those who are not living here in Australia. Off our website, we print with Lightning Source. So this book is, if you buy it off our website, which I'll tell you in a minute, if you are in the UK or the US, or if you're in the UK or in Asia or in South Africa, it would be printed in England and shipped from there. If you are in the US, it would be printed in the US. If you live in Australia or New Zealand, it is printed here in Australia and shipped from there. That is the beauty of the way we do things these days, of printing on demand, working with an international company like Lightning Source. The book should also be on the website in either in print as softcover or hardback, but also as an EPUB version. If it's not there already, it should be there fairly shortly. It has DRM associated with it because we've had a few problems of those things. And so like many publishers these days, we've been instigating a DRM. So thank you, Bill, and thank you, Paul. And for those who haven't bought the book, you are more than welcome to go to our website, www.atfpress.com. atfpress.com, and the book is there on the front page with a number of other publications. So thank you all, and this will be up on our website in the next few days.